Hi everyone. So the other day I attended the March for Regan Russell. For those of you who don't know, Regan Russell was an animal rights activist who was killed while protesting outside of a slaughterhouse in Burlington, Ontario. She was unfortunately struck by one of the slaughterhouse trucks, and according to eyewitnesses that I talked to, they believe that this was an intentional killing and she was murdered by the slaughterhouse truck driver, but this is still currently under police investigation. This march was organized to honor her death and carry on her animal rights message, with the hope to encourage members of Parliament to repeal Bill 156, which is an animal ag-gag law designed to stop animal rights activists from blowing the whistle on animal cruelty occurring on farms and slaughterhouses. After the march, protesters gathered in front of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario in Queen's Park, Toronto, where several speakers, including friends and family of Regan Russell, spoke about Regan, the tragedy of her death, and their frustrations with Bill 156. Several members of provincial parliament were also in attendance, and I felt that this protest was very important for the animal rights movement, not just in Ontario, but across the world, so I recorded this event for those of you who could not be in attendance.
Regan was a kind, elegant, strong, and courageous person. She was one of Canada's animal activist pioneers and deserved better. Regan dedicated her whole life to animal rights and human rights activism. In 1977, Regan, in her early 20s, became a lifelong voice for society's most oppressed and exploited groups. Her compassion and fearless determination to stand up for animals, women's rights, Indigenous rights, and Black Lives Matter, and do what is right in the present moment will always be an inspiration to all. Let's take 2 minutes to listen to audio of Regan in her own words.
They abuse animals. I'm tired of people using animals for entertainment. Our entertainment. They have their own interests. People say we're breaking the law by storming. How do you think women got the right? How do you think slavery was abolished? People stood up and broke the laws because they're stupid laws. This is my dad.
This is the only way you can expose it. It's private property. It's just like, how do we know what they're doing in there to the pigs, except the people who work there tell us, and we get video footage of it. They won't let us in because they know that what they're doing is wrong. Because I've been doing activism since 1977, when the seal hunt was really first exposed. That's when I got involved. I just read an article in the paper, and honestly, I couldn't believe my ears. You are hitting baby seals over the head and taking their skins off? I mean, I was just so shocked, and I thought, I'll make a sign, and I will go down and protest, and it'll all stop. I knew nothing about the food I was eating or any of that. There was no internet, you know. If it wasn't for Peter Singer's book, Animal Liberation, that was my only insight as to what was going on. Once you open that door as to what's going on, it is just a world of shock. We've been sold a bill of goods our entire lives. Me, my parents' generation. It is shocking, absolutely shocking. The lack of regard for the feelings of our fellow Earthlings. It is shocking. Well, I don't know if it does any good, but I know doing nothing does no good. Yeah.
At 65 years old, Regan was at her prime. She said she would fight to overturn Ontario Ag-Gag Bill 156, which aims to prevent animal activism such as bearing witness and animal rescue, and to silence whistleblowers. Regan was willing to go to jail and proudly said her dad Bill was going to join her. Nothing could stop Regan except a transport truck carrying pigs, the very thing she was protesting. 4 weeks ago today, on Friday, June 19th at 10:20 a.m., Regan was run over and killed by a pig transport truck at Safina Fearman Slaughterhouse in Burlington, Ontario. Regan was at the Toronto Pig Save Vigil with 6 other activists giving water to pigs on a scorching hot day. On this particular day, she was there to oppose Ontario Ag-Gag Bill 156, which had passed 2 days prior. She was concerned that the bill would prevent future activists from peacefully bearing witness to individual pigs, cows, and chickens going to slaughter. Regan has been so cruelly and violently taken from this world. Our collective responsibility is to ensure Regan doesn't die in vain. Regan lost her life standing up for the animals. In a sense, the meat industry killed Regan Russell. The meat industry lobbied hard for the draconian and repressive Bill 156. The government listened to the meat, dairy, and egg and other animal exploitation industries. In light of Regan's mission, we asked the Ford government to repeal Bill 156 and replace it with a Regan Bill of Animal Rights. A Regan Bill of Animal Rights would protect the right of protesters to protest in safety. It would defend whistleblowers. It would recognize the personhood of pigs and other animals and replace the property status they currently have. And it would stop funding the meat industry and give subsidies to transition to our food system to a completely vegan, plant-based one. Regan's sign read, "We are their voice." And today her husband, Mark, is carrying that sign that she made. Our first speaker is Malika Gupte. Malika attended her first vigil weeks before Regan died.
Hi everyone. So I was about to attend my first vigil. And I was scared, I was mortified, and I probably thought about 20 times, I can't do this. I can't go watch pigs about to get slaughtered. I just can't. But somehow I got into my car and I drove to Fairman's Pork Slaughterhouse on Sunday, June 14th. I was alone, I was scared, I didn't know anybody, and I walked up to the intersection and Regan was the first person I saw. She came to me and she introduced herself. And she brought me over to the spot in front of Fairman's where she stood for years, every single week, bearing witness. And we talked, and she shared about her animal activism since 1979. And I remember asking her brutal questions like, what's the point of even coming? What's the point of, we can't let these pigs out. We can't help these pigs. They're gonna get slaughtered anyway. And she looked at me and she said, Malika, coming out here, bearing witness, taking videos, sharing them, is better than doing nothing and sitting at home and doing nothing. She taught me that saying the statement, I love animals, can only be backed up when you are a vegan, when you are an active vegan. But most importantly, she taught me something. She said, the most powerful thing that we can all do is use our voices on online media, social media, and having conversations with people around us, friends and family, and telling them about what happens to these poor animals all the time. So that day I finally made the decision, after way too long, to go from vegetarian to fully vegan. And I realized that day, Regan was the first person in my life that I'd ever met that truly loved animals. She was the first activist I ever met, and what an activist she was. That following week, I was supposed to go to the vigil on Friday, but I was feeling depressed, I was feeling sad, I was feeling hopeless. I was traumatized by what I saw on Sunday. And you know what? The bill had just passed. I felt, what's the point? And then I heard that Regan had passed. And I thought to myself, if a woman can put her life on the line for this cause, the least that I can do is show up. Regan was a force of nature. She was unstoppable. She was steadfast in her passion for animals. And I know I was destined to meet her that day. And I know a part of her lives in me and all of you for showing up today for such an incredible woman. So please, go vegan for Regan. Go vegan for all the animals she died trying to save. But most importantly, go vegan for yourself. Because living a life free of violence and free of cruelty is one of the most sacred, beautiful things that we can do. Thank you.
Thanks, Malika Gupte. Regan's death is a tragedy that could have been avoided had Safina Fearmans agreed to Toronto Pig Save and New Wave activism proposal for a safety agreement. We launched a petition 2 years ago on change.org called Michael Latifi, the owner of Safina Fearman's slaughterhouse, stop endangering activists, negotiate a safety agreement at Fearman's now. Regan's legacy of compassion lives on in all of us and will continue to shine a light on the violence and bloodshed at Safina Fearman's slaughterhouse. We are at Queen's Park to demand justice for Regan Russell. We are asking all MPPs to re-look at the decisions they made that led to this moment. In the months before her tragic death, Regan was working to defeat Ontario Ag Bill 156. In her last Facebook post on Thursday, June 18, she expressed concern. Quote, Bill 156 has passed. Now, anytime an animal is suffering on a farm in Ontario, no one, not even an employee, has the right to expose it. This decision is evil. Animal ag is evil. Cancel animal agriculture.
Yes.
In February, before COVID was widely recognized, Regan met with MPPs. We demand Bill 156 be repealed in her name, and that the government replace it with a Regan Bill of Animal Rights. Bill 156 is an unconstitutional law, and Regan lost her life trying to expose it. We call on those in power to repeal the bill with immediate effect and replace it with Regan's law, ensuring protection for animals and those exposing secretive industries built on exploitation, and initiating a major transition to a completely plant-based food system. No more slaughterhouses, like the one where Regan was violently killed. Next, Regan's compassionate family is going to say a few words. Mark Powell. Mark is Regan's husband of 19 years. They grew up in the same neighborhood, and life brought them together years later. Mark is working to ensure the police are held to account and that they lay charges.
Thanks again. First, from the family, I'll let the professionals speak to Bill 156, except for one simple statement. As Canadians, we own that building behind me. We built it. We put the people there to represent us. They've made a mistake. All I'm asking them to do is recognize their mistake. We would like the bill repealed. To do that, I think it's a stroke of a pen. So pick up your pens and start over. I mean, it probably took a lot of lobbying and a lot of money to get that bill to be worded the way it is. So let's just start over. Realistically, how hard is it? We're here, you work for us, do it. You've got 3 days left before you break for the summer. Do it. Start over. That's what I need to say about the bill that my wife was fighting against. That's how she got killed. She stood up, as she's done for 43 years, for injustice. That day she was standing up for animal rights. She was standing up for the pigs. She was standing up against animal cruelty. Many other times she stood up for her fellow human beings. So she did not differentiate. If there was an injustice, she was going to stand up. She was going to start the car. And we did. It was not uncommon. So I'm really overwhelmed by the turnout today. I'm overwhelmed by how the world has responded to Regan's death. And it's certainly a difficult life right now. But you are making it a little softer today. You're helping take the edge off for me and my family and her friends that are suffering through this. But as I said to her 90-year-old father, I said, Bill, you're 90 years old. you're not here for much longer. But look what you get to see. If you weren't already proud enough of your daughter, we're just going to be so much prouder. The world is recognizing her and her activism over 43 years. And I can say truthfully, I am very proud and very thankful for all of you turning out today and all the efforts you make behind the scenes against animal cruelty and injustice generally across the board.
Joshua Powell. Josh is Regan's stepson. Living with her through high school, Regan nurtured Josh's political mind and mentored him in public speaking. Josh is working to overturn Bill 156 because it played a role in killing his stepmom.
Thank you. Yeah, first and foremost, thank all of you people for coming out today. I mean, there really are no words. I've been made aware, and we're working toward doing a public memorial for Regan on the 26th at 7:30 in Hamilton, and it's going to be a candlelight vigil. It's being organized by the Hamilton Animal Safe Group, so I figured first things first, get the business out of the way. We'd like to see anyone there. I think Dunder and Castle Park is the tentative plan, but I have something to say. 28 days ago, my stepmother Regan Russell was killed standing for what she believed in. It is also on that day that a travesty of legislation became a tragedy. Regan was a compassionate, logical, and tactical woman who enlightened so many in her lifetime through her ability to treat everyone as an individual with the respect they deserve. Bill 156 winded Regan. Suddenly, 40 years of effort was at risk, and no longer was she simply speaking for the voiceless animals. She was now speaking for herself and those who fought for advancement of animal rights. Her fight against that bill ended the day it began in precisely the way people feared it would in light of the language at play in the bill. Bill 156 should never have been passed. The language and scope of the bill violates many of the clauses in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, let alone being written in such a way that absolves members of the ag industry of any blame in the death of those who oppose them. That's just it, though. It did pass, and here I am preaching to the choir. All of you before us recognize the threat inherent in Bill 156 because you care deeply about animal protection. All of us here are here because we care deeply about Regan, the woman, daughter, wife, activist, stepmom, friend, and mentor. What is important now is that we take a page from Regan's book. We have the microphone, and it is time to speak. Speak to your friends, your family, your MPPs. Hell, speak to the squirrels. I'm sure plenty of them knew Regan. My point is that all we can do now is speak, spread the word about what happened to Regan and how her death wasn't simply the result of a poor choice by a single person. Her death is a concern to all Canadians, regardless of where they fall on the spectrum of animal rights. Regan's death was the result of a milieu of stagnant policies, practices, and minds here at Queen's Park. There is no doubt in my mind that every yay vote that came out of this building in the name of Bill 156 was another signature on the death warrants of animal rights activists going forward. To see the result of their lack of care and attentiveness to their responsibilities so soon, I am shocked and dumbfounded by the deafening silence from these MPPs. 28 days later, and while I struggle to grasp at our loss, I still struggle with understanding why it happened. It is appalling to think that only 22 MPPs saw the clear and present danger in the text of Bill 156. It is shameful that it has come to the death of my stepmother to highlight the flaws in something that should never have been passed by a responsible government body. It is terrifying to assume that the average Canadian knew nothing of this threat because it targeted a specific community of activists. It falls on us now to pick up Regan's torch, spread awareness, and secure justice in her name. Bill 156 must be repealed. Our democracy depends on it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Shane Martinez. Shane is Toronto Pig Safe's criminal lawyer who is assisting on the request for a coroner's inquest into the death of Regan Russell. He is also helping us navigate the ongoing police investigation into her death.
All right, thanks everybody. Before I get into my remarks, I'm just going to ask everybody for a favor. I'm going to say repeal, and I'm going to ask you to say 156 loud enough so that everybody who is tone deaf in that building can hear it. Okay? Repeal!
156!
Repeal!
156!
Repeal!
156!
Right, thank you. So, as Anita noted, I'm assisting Toronto Pig Save in two regards. The first is pushing the police, the Halton Regional Police, in their criminal investigation to make sure that it's a thorough investigation, to make sure that all the appropriate charges are laid once they have all of the available information and they're able to consider it. And we're also demanding as well that they release the video from Fearman's that shows exactly what happened that day. In addition to that, today we are announcing that Toronto Pig Save is supporting Regan's family, and I've had an opportunity to get to know Josh quite well by speaking to him over the last number of days. Mark and I haven't connected yet, but I look forward to making his acquaintance as well. That Toronto Pig Save will be supporting Regan's family in calling for a coroner's inquest into her death. In Ontario, there's two types of inquests. You have mandatory inquests and you have discretionary inquests. In these circumstances, Regan's death would be dealt with by way of a discretionary inquest. And what we're asking the chief coroner to do is to exercise their discretion to say that one is warranted in these circumstances. There's a number of factors that the chief coroner is going to consider in reaching that decision, but I just want to talk about two of them right now. The first is whether or not it's in the public interest to have a coroner's inquest. Whether the public can gain something by way of knowledge and information to give us clarity about what happened. I would say it's absolutely in the public's interest to have an inquest in these circumstances. Regan's death has reverberated throughout the world, all over Latin America, Europe, Australia. People have come together and they have recognized her for the martyr that she is. They've also made commitments to continue their struggles in her name to make sure that her death is not in vain and that her work is continued. That work is happening right here in Southern Ontario as well. The vigils have not stopped since Regan's death. And there's been a commitment by all of you and so many more wonderful people across Southern Ontario to continue them in her name. The other element that the police are going to be looking at, the coroner is going to be looking at in determining whether or not to hold an inquest, is whether or not a jury will be able to make useful recommendations to prevent deaths like this from happening in the public. And it's the position of Toronto Pig Save that absolutely useful recommendations can be made in these circumstances. This was not a one-off. This was not something that was completely unexpected. This was something that was absolutely reasonably foreseeable in the circumstances. Vigils had been happening at Fearman's for 9 years. And not only at Fearman's, but at other locations across Southern Ontario for the last 5 years, members of Toronto Pig Save and their allies have made complaints to company owners and the police alike about transport trucks nearly striking down people in the same way that Regan was struck down. This was not a surprise to anyone. Everyone, from the owners of the company to the police, were put on notice that this was a dangerous situation. People were legitimately exercising their charter rights to freedom of assembly and freedom of expression, and they were not being given due consideration or protection under the law. As was noted already, Bill 156 absolutely needs to be repealed, and it needs to be replaced with a law that protects animals and protects activists like Regan so that they can continue on doing their valuable work.
Yes.
The last thing I'm going to say, just in case they didn't hear us the first time, repeal!
156!
Repeal!
156!
repeal.
156.
Thank you very much.